when Jesus died and came back to earth for 40 days, he walked, 7-8 miles with those people, the two guys or something, but they didn't
Road to
recognize who he was, just walking and having a good old time. My question is, why didn't Jesus reveal himself?
We find Jesus cooking fish on the disciples on the Sea of Galilee after he rose from the dead. And it says none of them dared ask if it was Jesus. You'd say, well, what in the world's going on here? I believe that Jesus, when he offered his hands and his side to Thomas, put your hands in the fingers in the holes in my hands, thrust your hand into my side where the Roman spear went in. Those marks were still in the body of Jesus after the resurrection. Now, when we get to Revelation chapter 4 or 5, we find this scene in heaven, and we find an angel, strong angel, holding up this scroll, which most people believe is the title deed to the earth, saying, "Who is worthy to take the scroll and loosen the seals thereof?" And it says that he wept because there was no one in heaven or anywhere else that could open this scroll. And then one stepped out like a lamb that had been slain. Speaking of Jesus Christ. And as Jesus begins to loosen these seals on this scroll, cataclysmic judgments break out on the earth. And again, God judges before he takes it back. Now, we were judged by Jesus' blood on the cross. We're now found innocent. But the world's going to be judged as well, called the tribulation period. Now, I believe those marks that were in Jesus, in his hands, his side, I believe also the disfigurement of when he, at the time of death, the Bible says he had a crown of thorns shoved down on his head, the swelling and all. He was blindfolded and beaten. He was laid open with the coat of nine tails. And by the way, the Romans that beat somebody didn't care if that coat of nine tails wrapped around your back or around your face or your neck. They were there to beat you till you almost died to get a confession. Jesus, having nothing to confess, took, we don't know how many lashes. Some people say, well, it was 40 minus 1. He wasn't beat by the Jews. He was beat by the Romans. Romans didn't have the 40 minus 1 law. They just beat till they felt a person was near death. I believe that Jesus was so disfigured at the time of death, he wasn't really that recognizable. I have done many memorial services. I've had to go identify bodies that have been in car wrecks, where when I look at the corpse, because of the swelling at the time of death, it disfigured their face so bad, I had to look at them several times to really realize that this is who it was, because their face had puffed up probably a quarter to almost half the size it normally is because of the bruising and all. I believe this is what happened with Jesus. Why they couldn't recognize him on the by the Sea of Galilee. Why they couldn't recognize him in the garden when it was only when Jesus said Mary that she said Rabboni. She said Lord. She knew the voice. She didn't recognize him. Now, some people say, well, because it was dark and early in the morning. Maybe. But certainly for the rest, that wasn't the case. And I believe that disfigurement that Jesus had, like a lamb that had been slain, as it says in Revelation, is why the people on the road to Emmaus did not recognize him. And it says when he broke the bread, they knew who he was. And probably when he broke the bread, they saw the holes in his hands and that in his wrist or his hand. And then they knew who it was, and he vanished out of their sight.